50 years ago, in January 1972, a group of brave young men began the longest protest for Indigenous land rights, sovereignty and self-determination. They planted a beach umbrella and signage proclaiming the Aboriginal Embassy. That's being brave. That's attempting to make change. And that's what it's all about. We have to move in a different direction to just talking about it, raising flags or having conversations. It's what are you going to do as a student group? How are you going to influence your space? What are you going to do to influence the way teachers conduct themselves? And how are you going to be more inclusive? So stories of being brave. Have you got a story of you being brave? Tamarie, you talked about your desire to get your ancestral remains home to country in a respectful way. And what have you done in your journey that made you feel as though you were doing something substantial, something brave, you were making a change?
That's a pretty powerful question. I get emotional sometimes with some of the things that I do. You know, I'm mindful my father was whipped at school not to speak his language. My father wasn't allowed to drink out of the same tap as non-Aboriginal people. You know, I talk about my life and my life only. My father was a 22-year-old Aboriginal man that made love to a 17-year-old non-Aboriginal lady and produced me. And my white grandfather said to my dad, you either go to war or you go to jail. So my father joined the army, he went to Vietnam and he fought for his country that he couldn't even vote in. And so now I proudly teach my language at schools, and I listen to little beautiful non-Aboriginal kids speak my language with confidence, with pride, and it humbles me because I feel that I'm doing the wrong thing by asking to get paid for this thing when I'm sharing my culture. And to hear Aboriginal kids speak my language, to hear non-Aboriginal kids speak my language, I feel guilt asking for money to be paid, but I need to be mindful, I have to pay my mortgage. But the most powerful thing I've done lately is I'm teaching the Labor Party my language. And this month the Labor Party are going to use that language in Parliament House. Now how moving is that, and how humbling is it that for a society that hated Aboriginal people before and now going to speak my language in Parliament. And to me, I think that's brave, and I think it's a challenge that I really wish my father was there, because, you know, when it happens, I'm just going to be, I don't know, probably the same feeling I had when we were sitting in a room and the judge said we had native title. That was a big day too. Took us a long time to get it. So, you know, sharing language and listening to kids speak my language is humbling, and we teach about respect and saying Naitalia, thank you. You know, this year I had a Christmas card from a single mum of 3 kids, and she had 2 older daughters and a young boy that I teach at kindy, and this boy was punching his sisters and being really disrespectful to his sisters, but because this fellow learnt Naitalia and respect, he now takes the food from the stove and gives it to his sister at the table, and the mum was just so grateful for learning that side of my culture. And so, you know, these things make you put up with all the people that knock you, all the people that stab you in the back, all the people that think that, you know, oh, you drive a Merc, you make too much money, you're a white fella now. Well, some of us and most of us live in 2 worlds. I have my Aboriginal family say to me, are you white today, you're black today? I have my white family say to me, are you black today or white today? Well, I live in 2 worlds, and I'm proud of who I am. And I think one of my cheekiest comments I make to all kids at school, students, sorry young lady, is they say to me, oh uncle, why do you think you're Aboriginal, mate? You're not very black. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great question. Here, look, here's my cup of coffee. And if I pour lots of milk in this cup of coffee, is it a glass of milk or a cup of coffee? And they go, oh, coffee. I said, well, that's right. My dad's the coffee, my mum's the milk. You put them together, I'm still coffee. and proud of it. So, to answer your question, I think teaching our language in this modern world is the way to go about it, because what I love about students, and especially awesome young ones like this one, is if a non-Aboriginal fellow learns our language, learns our culture, understands our people, you know, these kids today, they can be lawyers, premiers, judges, anything they want now. They've got the opportunity to do that. When something about an Aboriginal person crosses their table, they're not going to stick it in the too hard basket. They're going to deal with it. They're going to work it out. They're going to go, oh, I know Uncle Tamaru from school. Yeah, he was a good bloke. This bloke might be a good bloke too. Let's work with them. So this is what I love about my culture. What I love about trying to be brave, trying to stay at school and keep teaching it. You know, answering all the naysayers. Like I was at one of the largest private schools in this state with my auntie, who I look at as my mum, Auntie Lynette Crocker, and a teacher said to me in front of her, "Why do you think you're an elder?" And my auntie just ripped her a new one and just educated her on about how we have emerging elders and how we have elders that have been around for a while that educate and share knowledge with us, and put her in her place. When actually now she's a really good friend of mine and I love working with her. She's a director of a kindy and we work closely, because I believe as friends, as educators and teachers, we should be able to have an argument. You know, I argue with my wife every day. Doesn't mean I love her any less, but we end up walking out on the same page. So being brave is sharing my culture when it wasn't wanted once. And I'm really looking forward to hearing Kaurna language spoken in Parliament House.
Thanks for that. Certainly example of being brave and prepared to make change. Many examples in that. So Sasha, putting the brush to the canvas, I always remember an old Aboriginal friend of mine who people kept asking what he was painting. He said, look, if I stand here and tell you what I'm going to paint, I'll never paint anything. So you've painted a lot of stories on canvas. What's your example of being brave and making change?
I think my story of bravery as well does incorporate my art. It also incorporates my education and the two worlds education, I think. I think that's really important. So I was the first person in my family on my mum's non-Aboriginal side and my dad's Aboriginal side to finish high school and first to go on to university in my family. And so I think that's really important that I had that education, but also acknowledging that that's not the only way to have an education. You know, my painting and my connecting to family, connecting to country, that is also just as much of an education for me. But I think the bravery is being able to walk into worlds and be able to support the non-Aboriginal world to understand painting and art and history and do that truth-telling through that kind of way. Again, like I said, I'm a social worker, so I make sure that I involve a healing approach. So I think that's where kind of the bravery kind of comes in through my art and my work. If I didn't go to university, if I didn't study social work, I wouldn't be in the privileged position that I am now to be able to support our Aboriginal families. To heal from past traumas that we've kind of been through. You know, I work with a lot of stolen generation mums. I work with a lot of mums that haven't had their Aboriginal parenting practices valued. So I think it's really important to kind of talk about the ways that I do that through art and through healing and bringing our Aboriginal parenting practices and our strengths of culture, our strengths of parenting in. And I guess, like I said, the bravery kind of comes in by working in a kind of a white mainstream system and constantly kind of having to push back on that system to educate people, I guess, about our parenting and about our ways, about the truth-telling and about how important it is to continue our healing journey. And we all be on that healing journey, non-Aboriginal and Aboriginal people. So yeah, I think that bravery comes in little acts every single day. I think there can be some really big, brave acts, but it's also in that constantly fighting the system and ensuring that our voices are heard, our voices are valued, and we continually stand up.
I might leave you till last, Frank, because you're one of the bosses. Kalisha, what about yourself? Being brave, making change. You've obviously done that by being a leader in your school. It's an amazing achievement.
I think being brave to me is about telling your story. So for instance, last year I gave a speech to the school about racism and specifically about my story with racism. And I think by me sharing my story, I think even though it was confronting, I think it did open the eyes for both students and teachers about what goes on in not just Aboriginal lives, but also in other people's lives as well, that what you say and what you do can actually affect others. And I think by telling my story and being brave to able to share that, I think it kind of opened up the topic about what else can be done within the school system to kind of rule out racism, and also to what else can be done to kind of prevent it from happening within a school setting and also within like a social and community setting as well.
And how did you get a reaction to that? Was it a positive one?
It was emotional. I did cry on the day, but I had a lot of teachers and students coming up to me afterwards to say that they were very empowered by my story and that it was something that they were definitely going to look into, and that's kind of what I wanted to achieve. So having them be able to come up to me and kind of having that conversation was the main reason that I did the speech, and I'm grateful that I was able to get that message across.
How did you feel about becoming a leader?
A bit nervous, to be honest. I'm not going to lie, because it is something that I love doing. I love working with people and I love getting out in the community. So being able to kind of start that and be one of the leaders for that is very special to me, because I love speaking for others who may not have a voice yet. So being able to get their message across and being able to start that conversation for them is something that something that's very special to me.
Beautiful. Thank you. Now, Frank, you're a pretty brave character. Brave and making change. Where are the things that you believe you've done those things in your life?
Yeah, I think like the challenge for me is like trying to educate people, and I get people on my tours where they, particularly older people, and like they actually cry because they say to me, you know, we weren't taught anything about Aboriginal people, and you know, and just hearing those sort of things and think, well, you know, there's a lot that needs to be done, and education's, like I say, is the key, and seeing people like the teacher, you know, taking on those sort of leadership, even you, David, with your work that you do, you know, is inspiring, and I think to be brave, you've got to be courageous and go out and yeah, sort of challenge other people, but educate them, I think, is really important. I think education is key, you know, to be able to change perceptions that people have about Aboriginal people.
Beautiful. I think it comes back to Tamara's point about bringing people along with you and getting that story across. So when students are thinking about this and they're talking with their teachers and their families, it's about bringing them along. So it's important to get your messaging right, to get some help with that from your student colleagues and from some of the people that are sitting here with me today.